So we have our navbar built. The next thing we want to do is build our landing page. So again, you see here, we have the landing page with the repeating groups here that display the category icons as well as property listings. And remember, when we're doing this, we only have to make one. So we only have to make this element, and then everything else will display. So even though it looks like a lot, it's really only making one single component and then just replicating it throughout the page. The same with the icons here. So let's do that. So we're in our index page in Bubble, and the first thing we need to do is actually drag that navbar in. So let's come over and select our reusable elements. Select the drop-down. You can see we have navbar. Let's drag that over. You can see it just snaps onto the page exactly as it should, and it already looks great. Now, the one thing we do want to change is the alignment of our page. So we'll come and edit. Right now, the layout's aligned to parent. We actually want column. And most times you're building applications, you're going to want column and snap to the top. The reason being is when you're scrolling through a web page, what are you doing? Well, you're scrolling top to bottom. So normally that's going to be in column format, and then you'll have your just rows of content below as you scroll down. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a column format. Next thing we're going to want to do is display those icons. So you see here, we have the icons, and we already made that category. So let's go and let's select our repeating group. So let's drag that on the page, and you can see it's not in the format that we want. It kind of goes down in column, but we really want it in row. So how do we fix this? Well, let's look at the appearance. And right here, you can see set fixed number of rows is 4, and the columns is 1. Well, we don't really want that. We want a fixed row for sure. We want one row, but we want unlimited columns. However many categories we have, we want it to populate. So let's uncheck our fixed columns, but let's change our row to 1. Now you see we have the 1 row and a bunch of columns, but the sizing still is not correct. So we will, of course, change that. But before we do that, let's give it a type of content that we're going to be needing access to. So what are we accessing? Well, we made those categories, and we need to access all of the categories. So select your type of content as category. And then for the data source, simply select all category. And that's going to be everything we need to access the data we want to display. Now let's move into formatting this. Right now, it doesn't look too great. We need to make these groups a little bit bigger. Let's go to layout. You can see right now it's fixed. Well, we don't want that. We want column. And we do want it to snap to the top. So let's uncheck fixed width, like so. And then for the min width, we'll leave 0. And we want an infinite max width. Now, we're going to remove our height in a second. But again, if we put it to 0 right now, we couldn't really work with it because it's going to be one single line. The one thing we will add right now, though, is a margin. We don't want it touching the edge of our page, and really you never want elements touching the edge of your pages. So let's give it a left and right of, say, 20, see what that looks like. That's still a little close. Let's do 50. Okay, great. That looks a lot better. Now let's start adding our components in there. So what are we going to add? Let's go to Airbnb, and look what we need. So we're going to need the icon, and then we're going to need the text, so whatever it's called. So let's do that. Let's add an icon, and in this case, it's going to be an image. So let's drag an image over, just like so. You can see that it's snapped to the top left, but we want to center that. So let's go ahead and center the alignment horizontally. Now it's centered, and let's add our text. So we'll go and we'll select a text box, like so. Let's actually center that first of all, so horizontal center. And let's add our text information right now. So our dynamic text is going to be whatever that category's name is. So we'll select current cells category and then simply select display. And that's going to be that text that gets displayed. Now let's fix the formatting of this. So right now layout, it's going to be a fixed width, but we don't want that. Let's uncheck that and see what happens. Okay, you can see our repeating group also changed its width based on fitting in that text. And that's exactly what we want. We want it to be dynamic. Now let's give this a 0 min width and a 0 min height, just like that. And then we also want to give this margin because, again, we don't want them touching each other like they are right now. So let's give a left and right margin of, say, 20 and see what that looks like. Now this is still not exactly how we want it to look, so let's play around with it a little bit more. We want this off the top. So let's give it a top margin of, say, 50 pixels. And now it's quite a bit off the top. Even that might be a bit much. Let's do 30. So 30 pixels, and then let's fix the height. So before we couldn't select fit height to content and make it 0 because then it would just be a straight line. We couldn't put anything in there, but now we have elements in there. So let's put 0 and then it should snap and make it a lot smaller just so it fits the content. Now you can see it's touching the bottom. We also don't want that. So let's give a bottom margin of 20 pixels. Then you can see it has some space. So this is already looking a lot better. Let's give a bottom margin of this image as well. We'll just do of 10 pixels, just so it's a little bit off. And that looks a whole lot better, almost exactly like the layout is going to be here. And that's awesome. So the one thing we do need to change, though, is our labeling. So for our image, let's do something like category image. So image, we'll do category icon. And for text, we can leave it as is because it tells us what it is based on the text. Text current cells category display. So that's all fine. Now we need to insert the dynamic image that's going to be displayed here. So we can come and select our current cells category, and then we can select our image. Awesome. Now let's also change the width and height of this. So let's give it a fixed width and fixed height. Actually, we can uncheck the fixed height. Let's do this. Let's give it a width of 40. And then let's select our ratio, so fixed ratio, and give it a 1:1. So 40 width, 40 height. Let's see what this looks like if we were to preview. So you can see when we preview, amazing. All of our icons are available to us. We can see them all across the page, and it gives us this scroll bar in case we have more icons than we can display. Again, it's so cool that we can just build a single component and display it multiple times with different data throughout our application. Saves us a ton of time. So let's move on to the listings. And again, we're going to build one, and it's going to display all of them. So let's go do that. So what are we going to have? Well, we're going to have another repeating group, of course. So let's drag a big repeating group on here, just like that, right below our categories. And again, it's not in the format we want. So what do? The same thing we did in the previous example. Instead of rows as 4, let's go ahead and make that a unlimited number because we don't know how many rows there's going to be. Now, for columns, we do kind of want to say how many columns there are. Let's go check Airbnb. And on my screen, I'm on a MacBook, so there's 4 across. Let's do 4 columns. So uncheck or leave that checked, and then we'll just put 4 columns like so. Then you can kind of see how the properties are going to be displayed on the screen. Now let's think about what we're displaying. Well, it's going to be the property info. So let's see if we have our property. We do. This is going to be your data type of property. So select that. And now we want to search for properties based off your location or in proximity of you. So how do we do that? Well, let's look at it. Let's come to data source. We want to do a search for, and for the type, we'll select property. Now we're going to add a constraint. So let's add a constraint. And let's select our address. So when a host uploads a property, they're going to be giving it an address, and that's how we're going to know the location of it. So we're thinking ahead here. We're going to have an address that gets input, and then we can select is within. Now, Bubble knows that we're doing a geometric address, and it gives us that operator automatically. So it's giving us these pre-built clickable options where we can define the addresses within a certain constraint. So what do we put in these options? Well, let's see. This one allows us to select a bunch of things. This one allows, miles and kilometers. And this allows us, again, to select a bunch of options. So we know we need to put some form of distance. Let's do something like 100 miles. So we select 100. Make sure you type that in. Hit enter. And then we'll click miles. And then we'll get the current user's geographic location. So just type in current, and then you'll see it pop up. Current geographic position, and that's going to search for a list of properties in our database that are within 100 miles of the current geographic position of the user. And that's awesome. Let's close that and keep moving forward. Now let's go fix our sizing of our repeating groups because they look a little wonky right now, and I want to go fix that right now. Let's go to layout, and right now you can see it's a fixed container. Again, we don't want that. We're going to go with a column. We'll align to the top, and then we'll center everything. Then we want to uncheck fixed width. So we'll uncheck fixed width. We'll give it a 0 min width and a infinite max width. And then we'll change our min height to, let's say, 350. And with that, it's going to resize based on the components we put in there. So let's go ahead and put some components in there. Let's look at what we need. We're going to need the image. We're going to need a title. We're going to need some booking dates, and we're going to need a price per night. Let's see what kind of information we have available to us right now and see if we can't get close to this component right here. And now let's drag our image element in there. We'll come select that in the left side nav bar, drag it in, and then we're going to have to resize this, of course. So let's do that right away. Let's come to layout, and let's start playing around with the size. So right now, it's a fixed width. Of course, we want to uncheck that. And we'll give it a min width, though, of like 300 pixels. But you can see it extends over our repeating group. So let's fix that. Let's come back to our repeating group. And let's check fit width to content. So now it expanded to fit that component inside of each repeating group. But again, we don't want it touching the borders. Let's give this some margin. I'd say we give it about 10 on all sides. So 10, 10, even top and bottom. Just like so, to give it a bit of space. We also probably want to make this a 1-to-1 ratio. So let's do that. Let's come and select Keep Element Aspect Ratio. Great, so we have our image set up. It looks like it's going to be working correctly. Let's go ahead and add our text. So below that, let's drag a text box. See, we're barely going to be able to fit it in there, but we'll readjust the sizing. So we have our text box. One thing we notice is it says text B, and we didn't change our image B. So let's come and do that. Image, and we'll do property image. Let's keep it all lowercase. Property image, like so. And then our text will automatically change based off the text we give it. So for text, what are we putting in here? Let's go back to Airbnb and look. So it looks like they're putting the location of it. So let's do that. So let's insert dynamic data. And we want to select the current sales property. And we want to pull the address. But we don't want to pull the whole address. We want to select a specific piece of that address. Because if you come to Airbnb, it's only displaying the city and state. So let's copy that in our bubble application. Let's go back. And instead of address, let's extract something. So look at the other operators. We have something called extract populate. So let's select that and see what happens. It gives us the pop-up, and we can select a component. So look at all the components we can pull out of that address. We want to select city in our case. So let's do that. Select city. We'll close. Now we have the current sales property address, and we're just taking that city piece. So it should just display the city. Now, if you see here, this text is not aligned centered. So let's do that. Let's put it to the center. Let's also give a bottom margin of, say, 10 pixels, just to give it some space between this and the next one. Now, you can see I'm kind of running out of space here to input different components. So for now, let's make this repeating group a bit bigger in height. Instead of fit to height, let's uncheck that, and we'll leave that 350 pixel minimum in there. Now, we have our image here, but we don't have anything displaying in it. So let's fix that. Let's edit our image. So we'll insert our dynamic data, and we'll select our current sales property, and we want that list of images and then images within that list. So now we have that, but we want to select the first item. We don't want to select all of them. We just want to grab that top one and display that image. So great, we should be displaying that. Now keep in mind we can't preview yet because we've had no host come and input their property. So if we went to preview right now, you wouldn't see anything. We're just setting this up for later. Now the next thing we're gonna add is the distance away that this property is from us. So let's select a text box and we'll drag and drop in our repeating group. Now you notice it snapped to the bottom left. If I try to drag it up, it doesn't really work. Sometimes you have to play around with it. If I drag up between these two elements, it does add into our repeating group. Then I can just reposition that, and we have our text box. Great. Now let's fix the layout here real quick. So we come to layout, we'll center align. Now let's give it a few margins. So on the left and right, we'll give it a 20 margin, right and left. And we'll give it a top margin of, say, 10. And then a bottom margin of 10 as well. Great, so we have some space around it. And then let's give it a max width. Say we don't want it any bigger than 300, or we want it to wrap to be able to fit the text. So let's come to our appearance, and we'll start adding our text. And again, we're displaying the position of view relative to the position of the property. So we'll take the current sales property, we'll find its address, and we'll select distance from, and then we can select our current address. So current or current position. Type in current, and we can scroll all the way down to current geographic position. Select that, and we can close out. You can see it did wrap to a next line, so it didn't affect our positioning at all. We'll go ahead and close out of that. And again, you won't see anything displayed if you tried to preview this. Just know it will work correctly once we start uploading properties. Now, there's one more thing we need to add. Actually, this is a little bit far away. I don't like the 10 margin we gave it on the top. Let's do 5, and that looks a lot closer. And let's give this a 0 bottom. Great, just like that. That looks a little closer. Looks a little more exact like Airbnb has it. A little more condensed. So let's move on. Now, the next thing we're going to display is the price. Now, instead of reinventing the wheel, of course, we want to develop as fast as possible. Let's just copy and paste this component, and we have it just like so. So now we can just remove the text we have, but we kept the same layout, the same format, etc. And that's exactly what we want. That's the beauty of no code, copy and pasting elements. So let's delete the text it's displaying. So we want to display something different, and we'll insert dynamic data. What are we looking for here? Well, we're looking for the price, and we're going to want to select the price per night, so PPN, and then we'll format it. So we'll format as a currency. Now that we select currency, we can see all of these different options display for us that we can format it with. We're just going to leave a period here. We're going to have a comma. That's going to be the first. It does kind of look like a period. Just know the comma is the first one. And then we'll give it a currency of the US dollar and close. So we have the correct formatting, and now we want to add just per night. So tap spacebar, say per night, hit enter, and then it'll populate right next to the dollar sign. Now you can see in Airbnb though, they have this part bold and this part not bold. But we have this in one text. How do we separate the price and style the per night differently? So let's fix this. Let's bold the price, but leave per night unbolded. So how do we do this? Well, we're going to need our parentheses. So come up and give it parentheses. And then if you type B, that signifies that you're trying to bold something. Now all you need to do is give it a end tag. So we'll come down here. We'll do a /B parentheses. And that bolds whatever's in between this B and this B. And then outside of the B, you can simply type in per night. And then everything inside the B is going to be bolded again, but per night is not bolded. So you can see that display right here of the current sales properties, PPN. It's bolded, and per night is left unbolded. You can also do stuff like underline. So if we did the same thing except gave it a U, let's see what happens. Give it a U on both ends. And then you can see, let's fix that really quick. And then you can see it underlines the price instead of bolds. But we want to go back and bold. I'm just showing you different options you have available. Again, reference Bubbles documentation for all of the different formatting they do have available. Let's go back to bold though. And that's all of our information displayed. We have our image, we have our address, we have position from the current location, and our price. Let's actually give this a bottom margin though of, let's say, 20 pixels. And then we need to fix our repeating group. Because remember, we made it larger so we could fit in all of our components. Let's go fix that. And we'll say fit height to content. And that should snap it back exactly where we need it. Now, once we start uploading properties, they'll begin to populate across our entire web page. And that is essentially our main web page done. You probably thought it was going to take a lot longer doing all of these components, but really, you're just building one and replicating it across the app. So we just finished our Airbnb homepage along with our navigation bar. Let's get right into the next lesson, keep building upon this great foundation that we have so far.